Hello, how are you doing today? I and my buddy Joe English would like to talk to you today about adjective clauses. So, without further ado, let's just share the PowerPoint. All right. So, our discussion today will be about adjective clauses. I decided to keep for myself the present that I had bought for Ron's birthday. So we have a noun here, which is a present, and then we have a relative pronoun that, and then a clause I had bought for Ron's birthday. So the relative clause that I had bought for Ron's birthday is, in fact, functioning as an adjective clause because it modifies the noun. That's why it is called an adjective clause. So it's a relative clause functioning as an adjective clause. Okay. The book that I lent him is now overdue, right? So the book is the noun, and that I lent him again is a relative clause, and it modifies the noun, which is the book. So it's an adjective clause. Another example. Sometimes the relative pronoun or subordinating conjunction is left out. So for example, I don't have to mention the relative pronoun all the time. The book I lent him is now overdue. It's understood the book that or which I lent him is now overdue. Okay. She visited Paris, comma, where she had been born. Where she had been born is an adjective clause because it modifies the noun Paris. Moving on. The writing group she started meets every Monday evening. The relative pronoun that was omitted. So originally the sentence read as the writing group that or which she started meets every Monday, for example. So I can omit or delete the relative pronoun as we said in the last slide. And I can say the writing group she started meets every Monday. Sometimes the introductory word is omitted altogether, just as we explained now. An adjective clause usually begins with a relative pronoun, although it may also begin with when or where. And that example shows what we're talking about. The writing group she started, which means which she started. When we say she visited Paris, where she was born. So where I can uh, start a relative clause with where. Okay, uh, this is the place where I was born, for example. So where I was born is an adjective clause, and uh, where starts that relative clause, which functions as an adjective clause. Okay. Tomorrow is the time when I have an exam. So when I have an exam is a relative clause and also functions as an adjective clause after the word time, and so on. Okay, now moving to the next slide. Relative pronouns, such as what? We can say who, whoever, whom, whomever, what, whatever, that, which. So these are some example of relative pronouns to start the adjective clause. Now we know that the relative clause is itself an adjective clause because its function is modifying the noun that it comes after. So examples of relative pronouns, as we can see now: who, whoever, uh, what, whatever, whom, whomever, that, and which. Okay. Nora has a talent that is hard to match. Okay. Yes, this is an essential clause. Yeah, the essential or restrictive adjective clause is one that I cannot omit without affecting the meaning of the sentence. So if I try to omit the underlined clause now and say Nora has a talent, the meaning is not fully understood. When we complete with that adjective clause that is hard to match, we understand that Noor's talent is way higher or better than others. Or we understand that she has a very special or very high talent. So this adjective clause is necessary or essential to complete the meaning of the sentence. That's why I cannot omit it. If I say my uncle, comma, who was born in New York, comma, moved to California when he was 12. The underlined clause cannot can be omitted without affecting the meaning of the sentence. Here, the important thing is that my uncle moved to California when he was young. Doesn't matter where he was born, in New York, in somewhere else, it doesn't matter. So this is called non-essential or non-restrictive clause, meaning you can as well forget it, delete it, and not affect the rest of the sentence. So some adjective or relative clauses can be omitted without affecting the sentence. In this case, it's called non-essential or non-restrictive. And other relative or adjective clauses are essential to the meaning of the sentence. That's why you cannot omit it or delete it. And they are called essential or restrictive clauses. Another example, I won the first prize, comma, which was a smartphone. This is a non-essential clause. The important thing in this sentence is that you won the first prize. So you are the top winner, you are the top athlete, you are the top student in class, whatever. So the most important thing is that you won that first prize. It doesn't matter that first prize being a smartphone, being a medal, being whatever. So it is not that important in the overall meaning of the sentence. So you can omit it, and it is called non-essential or non-restrictive uh, adjective clause. Okay, moving on now to another slide. So, to sum up, adjective clauses may be either essential or non-essential. The essential or restrictive clauses are necessary to make the meaning of a sentence clear. A clause beginning with that can be essential, but it is not the pronoun that makes it essential. It is the meaning, the general meaning. If you feel that when you delete or omit that clause will affect the meaning of the entire sentence, then it is essential. That is the true test. Doesn't matter that much if it starts with that or not, but it happens that most of the essential clauses may start with that. But as I'm just telling you now, what matters is that little test. If you try to omit the clause and this affects the meaning of the sentence, then it is essential. For example, just the example we mentioned in the last slide when we said, for example, let me show it one more time. Yeah, Nora has a talent that is hard to match. If just I say Nora has a talent, it doesn't reflect the full meaning. Like hard to match, which means she has a very special talent, a very high talent, and so on. If I explain this in the first part of the sentence and say, Nora has a very high or unprecedented talent, then when I say that is hard to match, will not be that essential in the sentence because the meaning is already known from the other part. So this clause is just there to modify that talent one more time and not adding much to the meaning of the sentence. So the real criterion is not whether the clause starts with that or not, but whether the meaning of the clause is essential. That's why it's called essential clause or restrictive clause. Is essential or required for the meaning of the entire sentence to be clear or not. But in the other example, my uncle, who was born in New York, moved to California. What is important here, what is the message in that sentence, is that my uncle moved to California when he was young, for example. Doesn't matter where he was born, it doesn't add an essential element in the sentence. So it is called non essential or non restrictive. So, adjective clauses may be either essential or non-essential, as we explained. And for the non-essential clauses, they are not necessary for the meaning of the sentence. It's called non-restrictive or non-essential. It just adds some more interesting information about the noun that it comes after, modifies that noun, but they are not necessary for the meaning of the sentence. Usually, a clause starts with which can be non essential, but again, whether we started with which or not is not the criterion. The criterion is if I try to omit or delete the clause, if I feel it doesn't affect the meaning of the entire sentence, then it's non-essential. Also use commas to set off non-essential clauses from the rest of the sentence. The example that we said, my uncle, comma, who was born in New York, comma, moved to California when he was young, when he was 12, and so on. So the adjective clause uh, that comes after my uncle to modify the noun is set by or is, uh, you know, we use a comma before and after it. Just also another indicator that it is not that essential in the sentence. Um, Using commas is an indicator, but if I try to take it out and it affects the meaning, then it's essential. If not, it's non-essential. So the true test is not whether it starts with which or that or some other relative pronoun. The true test is if you omit the part, it doesn't affect the meaning of the sentence, then it is non-essential. Good luck with grammar. Grammar is interesting if it is used for a purpose. We are not learning grammar for the sake of learning some clauses or adjectives or whatever, but we then use these bits and pieces of grammar in our conversation, in our writing. Um, and I should know also the degree of formality of the language I'm using. So if I use a relative pronoun like who and whom, who for the subject and whom for the object, then this is used only in formal language if I'm sitting for an exam, if I am in a very formal situation. But if I am using English in or for just conversational purposes with family and friends, I'm just using who with subject and object. I'm going to avoid using certain pieces of grammar and so on. So it is very important when we learn grammar to know why we are using this grammar, why we are learning this grammar, and that we are going to use this grammar for um, good reasons. Okay. If there is no reason or no application for you to know a piece of grammar, then you might as not forget about it. Okay, we are learning this, for example, because we are going to set for the SAT test or ACT test or some other kind of tests like the IELTS, like the TOEFL, for example. Then in that case, you need to know uh, grammar. You need to know basics of grammar. You need to know when to use formal or informal language, and so forth. But when it comes to conversational English, that is not really evaluated according to formality or non-formality or accuracy or not non-accuracy, then most of these rules will not be very much needed. So it's important to know that we are not learning grammar in a vacuum. We're not learning grammar for the sake of grammar. We are learning it for the sake of better writing, for the sake of better speaking, considering the formality or non-formality of the situation, and considering that we will be, or some of the learners will be required to set for some English tests, and these tests are formal, then they need to know, some basics of grammar to help them with that. So good luck. I wish you the best, and I'll see you in the next one.